Hey, coffee experts. Those of you running independent coffee shops, you're always looking for ways that you can drop your costs. And we here at the Coffee Experts Club really understand that. And so we've started something called Indie Coffee Coalition. And what it's designed to do is to drop your costs on two of the things that you're probably experiencing the highest sales volume in your store. And that is energy drink and frat mix. Those two line items, we've created our own products and are offering you those products at a reduced cost so that you can cut out the Red Bull of America. You can cut out the main lines of energy drinks that you're doing and serve your own energy drink at a reduced cost on a line item that you're probably already making a lot of sales on anyway. The best way that you can grow sales is by dropping your costs and maintaining a current volume. So check us out at indiecoffee.co and we'll love to tell you more there.
Welcome to the Coffee Experts Club, where we discuss all of the insights, expertise, and drama that goes into making your passion your profession. Our hosts, Aaron, Ben, and Drew, are three coffee experts who have taken their coffee experience and turned it into true expertise. They have consulted with major coffee brands throughout the United States and beyond, providing operations expertise and growth strategy for drive-through openings, multiple locations, and everything in between. So brew yourself a cup and hang out a bit with the Coffee Experts Club.
Coffee Experts Club. Good to be back with the band. Drew, we missed you last week on Grand Canyon Hike.
Yeah, I missed being here, and it felt now that I'm back better doing this than hiking with Dan Canyon.
I'll tell you what, so we were talking about it right before the show started, and Drew said he hit a wall. It's a 25-mile hike, right, Drew? You're saying it's 25
Right.
miles down there, and like the last 2 miles you hit a wall, and Ben and I agreed, no, we hit that wall before we started. We decided we're not doing a 25-mile hike at the top of the Grand
Yep.
Canyon.
Yep, I hit that wall 2 miles into the 25-mile hike.
Oh man, kudos to you, bro, though. Was it beautiful?
Amazing. It's a whole different, it's so ancient down there, you know what I mean? Untouched by us other than a tiny, thin little trail. So it's nice to see how well preserved. And it's the depth of the thing. You can look at it and just see layers and layers of history in the rock and in the plants. So yeah, it's amazing.
Love it. I love it. Well, I'm going to believe you for that. And I'm going to jump to that. What it looks like. And I think National Geographic took a drone down. So I might just watch that and we might just leave it there. We'll see where it goes.
It's good enough. You'll get it. You'll get the experience.
Well, hey, man, just catching you up and catching up our listeners. If you're joining us this week, man, this is the place you want to come. If you're thinking about opening coffee, if you've got coffee in your heart, this is the place to come. This is the place to send your friends who are thinking about opening drive-through coffee specifically. That's something we've been all doing here for decades. We've opened dozens of shops for dozens of brands. And, Drew and I have a coffee brand down in Belize where we're opening our third location this January. We're pretty excited about that. First drive-through coffee in the country of Belize. So we run everything remote. And I think that if you're wanting to learn how to do coffee, this is the place to be. But anyway, last week we talked about profitability, which, listen, I know it's nerdy. I know nobody loves talking about how you get to those things, but I promise you, it's like the lifeblood. We talked about, I had just met with a business owner, coffee shop owner that week who was in tears because she's not super clear on her numbers and it's causing such deep anxiety in her because she's bank account ledgering, right? How much money do I have in the account? How much payroll needs to go out? But because she doesn't have good controls in place, it's hard to know how that all works. How does it all fit? And so you're constantly out of the anxiety. I mean, probably a lot of you listening can relate to that. There's a system to it and the system needs to come by numbers. Ben, what are your thoughts on that? I know that we both lived in a regime at one time where bank account ledgering was something that was how an owner ran his anxiety levels, and it caused a lot of stress in your life particularly.
Yeah, it's hard because that's how you start off, right? When you first open your first location, you did brand new business. It's just the only thing you have to go off of, especially in those first 6 months, is like, what's in my bank account and what's going on in my bank account. But you have to graduate from that, and you have to graduate from it quickly. Otherwise, that anxiety, like, just think of how anxious you are when you first open. Like, that's just going to carry on and on and on if you don't graduate out of that into solid tracking of your actual financials, your P&Ls, your actual net profitability, your cost of goods, all of that. If you don't start running your business that way, those first 6 months of anxiety is just going to follow you throughout.
Yeah. So Mike Michalowicz is a guy who writes a book called Profit First. And really, that's what he talks about. There are a lot of people that do it from the bank account, but it causes so much stress. And like in Ben's scenario, Ben's running 150 employees, right? He's got 15 managers, all of them have Amex cards. This particular owner that we both worked with, who, man, I love, like we did a lot of work with, he grew. Ben, Drew, and I, all of us, like in our knowledge of coffee, we owe a lot to him. That being said, he would have freak out moments where it would be knee jerk and he'd be like, shut down all the Amex cards, cancel all the cards, no more spending, because he would go through so much anxiety. So as we talk about these things, realize it's not just a problem if you have one or two shops, right? Like the bigger you get, the more this problem
Mhm.
accelerates. And so until you're really, really clear on your numbers, like you need to be careful. And, there are dozens of conversations that Ben and I had with this particular owner where I was a consultant. Ben was the director of operations, where we would say, ho, 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 slow down, slow down, slow down. Like, don't go with your gut only on this one. Let's pull the numbers. And I think we had lots of conversations where we pulled him down off the rafters of, hey, no, no, no. I know it feels like that because your social post, you just had a troll that came in and said something ugly and it made you feel like everybody hates you. But like, that's not what the numbers suggest. And I think that when you have numbers and you can speak with authority, it knocks down emotion. Drew, I feel like you and I balance each other out really well with that when it comes to being owners at Coffee de los Mayas, where I think that you can drive with a lot of passion and lead with a lot of passion, but you and I will work really good in tandem of talking through numbers. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's been nice because, you want to be passionate about what you do, and you want to feel like you're connected to it in a way that is more than just numbers. And sometimes that can take you away, it can get lost out feeling connected to the business and thinking you know what's best all the time just because you're in the stores, you talk to the baristas, you shave the customers, but that's just one side of it, So to some people, that's a more interesting, more engaging side, and that's kind of how it has been for me. But having the numbers to pull me in and say, okay, well, this thing that I was excited about and I tried didn't do so well, and this thing I was skeptical about did really well, but I don't necessarily know because my feelings were, leaning one way. And can waste a lot of time being passionate about pushing something that's not working just because I'm, biased towards it. The numbers are going to free not just my mental space, but my emotional space to be able to invest in things that are, good for the company and work with more foresight and work with more educated, perspective rather than just my own emotional, let's do this, let's do that, let's explore this, let's explore that, because it is exciting and it's fun, but you're just exploring things all the time. How can you invest in one stray idea to take you where you want to go? You'll just be going, I don't know, I have a tendency to bounce sometimes. So when Aaron says we balance each other out, he's balancing me out on the numbers side of our.
No, but I think that where it is, and as you're listening, I think it's really important. We talk about this all the time. Maybe you've heard us talk about it before. We talk about it a lot in Coffee Experts Academy. If you haven't checked out the Academy, definitely worthwhile, coffeeexpertsacademy.com. We talk a lot about delegate and elevate. How do we delegate down so we elevate up to our highest level of brilliance? And I think that part of that is identifying your lane, right? Like, what is Drew good at as an owner? What am I good at as an owner? And how can we complement each other? And it doesn't have to be an ownership partnership. It can be people within your organization, but how can I identify Ben kicks ass at this while I kick ass at this? And then how do they complement each other? And I think Drew is amazing at pathos. Drew is amazing at culture. Drew's amazing at being a leader and leading leaders. Like, I think he does so well at that in ways that I feel like are much better than I would do, especially because I don't have all the years behind the bar like Drew has. Maybe you're listening today and you're like, hey, I want to start coffee, but I don't have a lot of years behind the bar. That's me, right? I don't have any years behind the bar. I've never pulled a shot and tried to sell it. I mean, that's not my job. My job is bigger business, opening locations, checking out the numbers, making sure everything makes sense, asking the hard questions, working with Drew back and forth on, hey, this is the people side of things, and this is the profit side of things, and how do we get those things to match? But I would say the biggest thing is just finding somebody you can balance out with and realizing it doesn't all have to be you. Because the danger is if you make it all you, then you're not able to grow, right? Because you become the choking point. But how do we remove you from the choking point? That's the key. And we went in that in depth last week. Well, really a thumbnail last week. Experts Academy, we do it. I think we spent like 4 or 5 weeks on it where we really drill down and give you clarity and give you tools. So if that's interesting to you at all, I think it's there. And also, as we talk about some things today, we're going to talk about how profit shouldn't just be for you, but ultimately profit should be something that you use to motivate your people. And we're going to get into that today. And if you're interested in these topics, I'm going to give you a way where you can get that free. I'm just going to give you our tool. So stay tuned for that because we're going to be winding up the show with that at the end. So Ben, we talked a lot about last week, profitability, looking at profit loss statement, getting down to your net number so you can sleep well at night. It's not just a knee jerk of maybe you're watching your POS. Drew and I use Square down in Belize. Man, the dashboard is really nice, but that's really only showing you gross, right? That's really only showing your top line number, right? And maybe you have like your labor numbers that are associated with it. If you've led that into your program, we use 7 shifts. So, we get a nice like percentage that's wed into it. But what it's not telling you is the full story of, yeah, you made this much money. You had a banner day, way to kill it. but what does that line out to after you've taken out all your expenses in your bottom line, in your net number? But this week, what we're going to talk about is once you get profitable, because that's what we're trying to help you get to, how do you share the profit? So Ben, I feel like you and I create something pretty cool. I don't know if you want to talk about it a little bit, but we created the whole incentive matrix, like this whole idea of how do we incentivize people based on profitability. And maybe if you could just give the people like a quick thumbnail, because I'm pretty proud, bro. Like we've rolled this out, that came out of your and my craniums working together. And then we've rolled this out for a lot of different businesses, not just with coffee. And I feel it feels pretty sexy. Now it's ours. So maybe Drew can tell us if it's actually sexy. Maybe you can tell people about profitability and how does that impact your ability to incentivize people?
Yeah. I mean, the whole goal is how do you create ownership in the profitability of your company in your newly hired barista, right? The 18-year-old kid, when they come into your company, they don't care how profitable you are. Like, why would they care about that? You're a job for the summer before they move on to other things. How do we incentivize that? Or how do we create that ownership within them? The easiest way to do that is some sort of profit sharing program. The minute you say that, every coffee shop owner, every business owner immediately goes, oh, hold on. Those are my profits. Why am I sharing them? And how much am I sharing? Well, the idea is, again, to create that ownership. And the easiest way to do that, to create that ownership, is to give somebody cash and say, here's how you can affect this cash. Here's how you can get more of it. And here's how you'll get less of it. And the minute you give somebody cash in hand and you say, you have all of the ability to actually get more of this, it's completely up to you, people start to perk up a bit. And that's what we did with the incentive program. Was we took the shops, each shop's profitability, and broke it down into ways that they could actually control that. For us, that was cost of goods, that was labor, and their sales. Those three things that, you'll see as line items on your P&L that your 18-year-old barista can effectively control, right? They can not dump a whole gallon of milk on the ground. They can be a little more careful, right? They can encourage customers to maybe get an extra shot this morning and boost sales or sell hard goods. And then, if the shop's dead, they could say, hey, we haven't had a customer for an hour. Hey, Mr. Manager, should there be 3 of us here? Should there be only 2 of us? So they can directly control at least these items on your P&L. So what we did is we broke that out and we said they can control this. And from these 3 line items, we're gonna give them basically a net efficiency. And from that net efficiency, it was gross minus COGS minus labor. Here's your net number. And then internally we said, okay, a percentage of this number we're willing to set aside as profit sharing bonuses. What that percentage is can vary wildly on how you want to set it, but just make that number whatever you want. And then we actually let the baristas know every month, hey, here's the bonus you're getting. Here's how it was affected. And we take the manager, we sit them down and said, well, it looks like you guys spent a lot in labor this month. So that directly affected your bonuses just because it's a function of a formula. Gross profit minus labor means lower bonus. And so when we introduced it and we were transparent about it with the employees, the baristas up to the managers, all of a sudden you had 18-year-old baristas going, oh my gosh, I actually care about the profitability of my shop because I can see how it directly affects this bonus that I get at the end of the month. And lo and behold, all of a sudden that ownership in your shop starts to skyrocket because people are actually concerned about what directly affects them and what they can directly control.
I love it. I mean, I think just let me take some anxiety out of the room. So most owners will say, I don't want all my people to see my P&L, right? That's worthwhile. I get it. You don't want your people to see maybe all the money and how it all works. And so what Ben's referencing is here, yes, it comes from your P&L, but we pare it down into something that you're probably going to want to be visible. Like they're going to be able to pull from whatever POS software you use, what you're doing gross, right? That's not a hard number for them to figure out. Then you're going to show them what they're spending in cost of goods. So how much that manager's ordering in milk, how much he's ordering in dry goods, like how much they're doing in your energy drinks, how much they're doing in each one of your line items, ice, if you're buying ice, whatever it is, all your COGS, whatever goes into making drinks goes in your cost of goods, right? So your general sales, right? Gross sales, subtract your cost of goods, subtract the labor, right? We figured when Ben and I were working through this and talking with the owner that we developed this for, we wanted to give them sticks they could control. They can't control rent. Right? They can't control the landscaper out front. They can't control if we're spending on security, right? If we have security coming and going, they can't control these different other line items that are within your P&L, but they can control how much they're ordering, right? And we've talked about this in previous episodes. Like You don't want a bunch of your cash sitting on your shelves.
Yep.
That's a poor use of your money, right? Like, let's make our money fluid. Let's make it liquid. How can we be spending? So keep the amount of stock on your shelves that's good for the location, and they can also control labor. Like, when are you exceeding labor? It sucks as an owner to always have to be watching your hours and being like, hey, why are our hours so high? Hey, why is our percentage so far up? No, you want your people to manage that, and not just managers to manage it, but everybody that's going to benefit from it. So the beauty is this P&L that we're talking about now, this incentive matrix, we pair out all the other numbers, just gross sales, COGS, labor, like Ben said. It creates what we called an efficiency net. And then from there, a rev share baseline. So then from there, the owner's like, I'm not going to share all that with them. That doesn't show all the P&L. And that's true. Well, it doesn't show all the P&L. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a percentage. We took 5% of that net rev, right? Brought it down and said, this is the rev share pool. And that 5% is what we're going to split out across the people that we're going to rev share with. Drew, you want to talk about it a little bit? Because I know you and I just did this whole exercise for Coffee de los Mayas. You want to talk about maybe like, who do we give it to? How does it work?
Yeah, I mean, so for me personally, not everybody's going to want to be, not everybody's going to have aspirations to be, a top leader or a top manager or even, a lead barista. But for someone who is aspiring for a higher level thinking, the system in place teaches them that there's a pulse to the business. And most baristas are just going to come to work, clock in, do their job and leave and not think twice about if there's too many baristas on bar or, if they have to throw away 4 or 5 drinks. That's just, to them, that could just be part of it. And it was part of it for a long time. It's like, oh, we just, we got this complaint drink, or I mismade this drink, or I spilled this drink. It was just part of it. But the way that the system is set up, it does kind of teach people, at least the leaders, to kind of begin speaking that into the younger baristas. And that's not just going to help them at the coffee shop, which of course is our goal in the coffee shop, but it helps them in their life to understand, well, these things do have an effect, and waste does have an effect, and overconsumption of time does have an effect. And I think, it does start to, we like to set up our systems in a way that teach people these skills, not just systems that are, of course, they're going to work on their own, but then it speaks to the education side of things. How does it speak the language of the baristas? And Coffee de los Mayas has a unique situation where one coffee shop is a much different economy situation than the next coffee shop. And we've had to kind of learn, at the one store where everything is going to cost, 30 to 50% more as far as cost of goods, cost of living, the rent is higher, transportation's more expensive. It's a little bit more difficult to live in an area that's more expensive. Of course, if you guys have moved from a rural area to a city, these things change. And so we've kind of had to determine, how do we break out these pieces and give them appropriately to people? Because one store may not be working necessarily harder, but if it's bringing in more money because the business is making more money, because the drinks have to cost more because the economy is scaled up, then that barista who's working at that store is going to have a higher cost of living as well, because we're charging more for our drinks, which means, milk costs more, rent costs more. So determining exactly how to break it out fairly. And we started with, of course, the management team and what that looks like. And we do give certain perks. Like, we make them be on their phones all the time, so that's, for us, we did that at Roasters, was a little bit of just a perk. But as far as the profit sharing side of things goes, we've broken it down into a time spent. We've made some mistakes. We hired some people on and gave them perks, and then they left, after like, oh, it was your birthday. We hired you and it's your birthday next week. Let's give you a birthday bonus because that's a fine perk and we'd like to see you involved. But then they left. So as far as these things go, the profit and loss and the incentive matrix goes, we've determined it off of, we have when we use it properly, a rigorous review system, and putting these people through a review system at regular intervals. So, a 3, 6, 9 a year style intervals where we check in with these baristas. And we have a lot of kids who have been with us for a long time. And so I think we feed those kids that have helped essentially build the business, and different types of perks along the way. We're not sure exactly what's going to work 100% of the time, but that's kind of the fun part of it, because what is going to work for the kids is inevitably going to help the business grow. Because if we can keep those kids around, we can keep teaching those kids the skills we need them to know in order for the business to be autonomous. Like, Aaron and I can both go hike the Grand Canyon next year, right, Aaron? If
we could.
We don't have to be managing the business. That's the end goal. You want to be able to, quote unquote, hike a Grand Canyon and unplug for 2 weeks if your business is working right. And I mean, the incentive matrix does something like that. It teaches your kids to teach the other kids to be independent. Right now, I didn't get too nerdy on percentages or numbers or what we're using, But really for us, it's based off of, time spent, loyalty, dedication, how much of an anchor are they on their team? How much do they uplift their team? All these things have gone into our decisions on, who is it that we can invest in? Because that's really what it is how can we invest without eating, up from underneath the bottom line of the business? And if we're just investing in people who aren't investing back, then, the business isn't going to work out so well.
Mm-hmm.
I think too, like there's some things that are really expensive, right? Like when you're like this is a conversation Drew and I have all the time. It's a conversation Ben and I had a ton in previous days, previous iterations for other businesses is what's the ROI on an employee, right? What's your rate of return? What's your return on investment in an employee? Man, if you've spent all the time recruiting them and then you hired them and then you spend a couple weeks training them and then you get them out there on the bar and you've had them working for you for a month or two, you're just starting to realize the return on the investment, right? And that's a lot of hours that you've invested in them. So how can we make sure that we're getting the best rate of return? Because it sucks to have somebody disappear after that. We just had a couple baristas leave us down at Coffee de los Mayas after they were performing so well. And we're like, damn it, like we just got you there. Like, because then it puts all the pressure back on existing team, right? So how can we motivate them? How can we get them incentivized to stay with us? And so if you can create barriers of incentivization where you're like, hey, stick with us for X amount of months and you're going to start to rev share on the profit, that's something that's appealing to people because that's beyond just tips and an hourly rate. That's actually giving them an ownership, like a phantom ownership, right? You're not putting them on the ownership docs, but you're willing to let them participate with you in the bounty, right? Like as we're winning, we all win. And so I need your help. And it also gives you an opportunity to coach them, right? Hey, we could have won better this month if you guys had kept a little bit better of an idea on your labor, on your cost of goods, on waste, and then helping them understand efficiency, right? Like, because those are the two different ways we make business is either we grow our sales or we become more efficient in what we're spending, right? But those are the only two ways you can make money in coffee. So how can I train my people to do both? Most people focus on growing sales, right? How can you upsell at the window? How can I sell them into a food at the window? How can I get them to be purchasing a hard goods that's going to lead them back the next month because I'm going to give them a free refill in that hard, whatever it is that you're trying to upsell at the window. Sure, that's one way. But the other way is, no, we can probably ratchet down on waste. We can ratchet down on labor. And we can grow money that way too from just existing traffic count, So I think that if you can visualize that way, and if this tool sounds exciting to you, or if this tool sounds like, dear God, I don't want to create it, but I would love just to plug it in. If you'll just hit us up on any of our socials, just comment in the instant messaging, the back and forth, just to us personally on any of our platforms, IG, Facebook, TikTok, you can just hit us up, DM us, and just say incentive, and I'll just send you the tool. I want it to be valuable to you guys. If you want education around the tool, I would check out coffeeexpertsacademy.com, but I'll just give you the tool for free. So just comment, DM us on any of our socials and I'll send you the tool. But essentially, we're going to take like a $60,000 store, let's say, for that month. We're going to then pare it all the way down to the incentive line, right? Like how do we get to the efficiency net we talked about? So let's say that turned out to be like 20. I'm actually looking at a set of metrics now for the road 395 for the boys. Right. So a $60,000 a month store. If you go to the efficiency number, it becomes like $26,000 after cost of goods and labor. And then from there, we're going to take 5% of that 26,000, which breaks down to a little over $1,000, like $1,300, right? And that $1,300 is what we're going to spread out across whatever we decide, managers only. For us, the way we decided was no, all the way down to baristas. So the managers make something, the assistant managers make something, the baristas make something, and then the regional managers make something from each one of the stores. So at the store level, the manager, the assistant manager, the baristas, they all have a different percentage. So maybe the manager makes 5%, assistant manager makes 3%, barista makes 2% of that, rev share baseline. And then for the regionals, we allow the regionals to make a percentage off of every store they manage. So then it sweetens the deal on Ascension as well, right? Because you're trying to grow Ascension and responsibility across your people, and you're not going to feel it that hard, right? Because if you're talking about $26,000 is what your net rev is from this matrix. Well, you're talking about only at $1,300, you're going to parse out 5% of your efficiency rev that you're going to parse out across all your people. And that actually is going to feel good to them. Like it's an extra bonus, an extra opportunity for them to get a couple meals with people they love. It's an opportunity for them to win as we win. So I got pretty nerdy on the numbers, Ben. I don't know if I went too deep, but what are your thoughts on that?
No, it's good. I think you mentioned it earlier about whenever you start to talk about opening up your numbers and being transparent with your numbers, most coffee shop owners and most business owners in general, let's be honest, immediately seize up and they go, well, hold on, those are my secret numbers. Got to keep them secret. But the more tightly you hold those cards to your chest, the less you're able to create owners inside your business, which to Drew's point, you never get a chance to do the Grand Canyon hike, because as long as it's just you that cares about these things and you never empower your people to, you'll never be able to get away, because you'll never empower your people to actually be able to be independent, like Drew said, and run the shop without you. So I always encourage, coffee shop owners is be as transparent as you're comfortable with, but especially with this incentive matrix, like you said, Aaron, where these are numbers that they can easily, any smart kid these days can look up your POS, can look up the receipt from the dry goods that they order, and they can figure this out themselves. Being upfront and transparent with it and giving these to them, saying, hey, here's how I want you to increase your bonus, and creating that culture within your company where people know, oh, hey, if you go and you work at this coffee shop after 60, 90 days, they actually start paying you their profits and you can actually make more. Like, creating that culture and transparency around your company is going to invite a whole heck of a lot more kids who may be looking at working at your shop versus somebody else's shop. That's super inviting to me. My buddy works there and he says, yeah, I get bonused out every month if we don't spill any milk on the ground. I'd be like, all right, I'll come work there if I can get extra cash just for not spilling milk on the ground. Like, those are the type of culture that you can create to, again, just gives you that ability to walk away and go hike Grand Canyon for 2 weeks.
I think when I was, in the throes of it with Roasters, a lot of it came down to the gratitude of the people that work for us. And yeah, it feels good. It's like, yeah, I'm getting a bonus. This is great. But inevitably, it's like, okay, this bonus has allowed me to do X, Y, Z. I can pay a little bit extra for a nicer phone, or I paid off my car a little bit sooner, or I've been saving up for this big event or to buy a house. And that's gratitude that the barista is going to eventually plug into being, oh, it's the job, it's the place that I work for. I could work in a dozen places and a lot of them aren't going to provide things like what we're talking about, because people don't think about it and people think about the bottom line. And ultimately, the gratitude the barista feels is involved in that. And if I have a whole team that's grateful for the business and the way we treat them, that's a business that's going to inevitably grow and run itself. And I'm not everybody's about growth, but I'm sure everybody's about the business running itself.
Mm-hmm.
I think ultimately, right, as we wind up today's show, the final take homes of this is you want to give people the sticks to be able to drive, right? Nobody likes being micromanaged. Think about you at their age in their space. Like, the most ambitious leaders you got, they don't want to be micromanaged. They want to be able to have the sticks to be able to drive, right? And you as an owner are probably nervous about how much responsibility you give them. So give them it in a controlled environment. And then remember that you're the one telling the story, right? You're the one that explains to them. They haven't done anything like this before. They don't know what it means. And so come to them with a good story. Hey, listen, I would like to begin to share my revenue with you like you're an owner. Like, I'm not going to make you an owner of the business, but I want you to feel that when I win, we win. So I'm going to make you a rev share partner. And what that means is I'm going to start giving you part of the profit. I need your help to be more profitable. And the times when we're more profitable, you're going to make more money. And the times we're less profitable, you're going to make less, because that's what it feels like as an owner. And then that also helps them to feel the things you feel, right? So that when labor's way up or cost of goods are way up, and you're like, hey, you had all the controls and you chose to use our money that way. And therefore, none of us are going to get out that much. I'm not as the owner. You're not as the operator. And you can really begin to invest in them this responsibility factor of ownership. Like, we haven't even gotten into the moral side of it yet, but I feel like as owners, as leaders, we have the moral obligation to the next generation beneath us to give them the tools to succeed for themselves. That's these two guys here. Both these guys have businesses. Ben has his own business. Drew's got his own business. They're running their own things because they were empowered when they were young. Ben in his little emo type pants, like was empowered when he was young. Drew with his long mane of long hair down to his butt, like they were empowered when they were kids to now be in the spot of being, adults who own their own thing. So I do think there's a responsibility for us of how do we invest? And then you get to taste the fruit of the labors is your people begin to take ownership because you've given them the opportunity to participate like an owner, and it's a win-win for everybody. So if you're interested in these tools, if these tools sound interesting to you, just comment on socials, incentives, and I'll send you over the tool. I would love to share with you. And guys, dude, such good times having Drew Moody back. Drew, I'm glad you didn't die in the Grand Canyon. It would have made De Los Mayas a much sadder place. So,
it was a close one.
All righty, boys. Thank you for joining us. If you're listening today, great having you. We'll see you here next week on Coffee Experts Club.
Thanks so much for joining us today. For those of you who are looking to become a coffee expert yourself, we offer an incredible, thorough training online for opening your first coffee drive-thru at www.myfirstdrivethru.coffee.